For hundreds of years, people have told us that medieval Christianity was not friendly to same-sex relationships at all. The story says that the Middle Ages were a time when people followed strict religious rules, even thinking bad. Thoughts would make you go to confession, and anything outside traditional marriage was not okay at all. We imagine serious-looking monks spending their days copying holy books, punishing themselves for fun, and definitely, absolutely never, ever forming romantic relationships with their fellow monks. After all, these were the Dark Ages, when accepting differences was very rare and the church controlled everything with complete power. But here's the thing about history: sometimes it leaves behind evidence that completely breaks what we thought we knew tonight. You are Brother Thomas of Winchester. It's the year 1274. You're 23 years old, and you've just arrived at the monastery of St. Catherine in the Byzantine Empire, after a journey that's left you smelling like a mix of ship, donkey, and sadness. You're here to study their old books, learn their copying methods, and bring knowledge back to rainy England. But what you're about to find in their library will make you question everything you thought you knew about your faith, your promises to God, and that increasingly complicated friendship with Brother William. Back home, the old book in front of you is beautiful gold leaf catching the candle, light Greek letters flowing across smooth animal skin that's better than anything your monastery's sheep have ever produced. But it's what those letters spell out that makes you nearly drop your candle into 1,000 years of priceless knowledge. This isn't a regular prayer book. It's a detailed ceremony guide for something called adelphopoiesis, which means brother-making, and it describes two men standing before the altar, joining hands over the gospel, sharing communion from the same cup, exchanging kisses of peace, and being joined together by the church in a ceremony that looks surprisingly like the marriage ceremony your sister had last summer, except with noticeably more beards and much better singing. This discovery, made properly by Western scholars in the 1980s and 90s in places like Mount Athos and right here at St. Catherine's, shows something amazing about medieval Christianity's approach to same-sex relationships. As we settle in tonight, we're going to discover not just what archaeologists and historians found hidden in monastery libraries, but what it tells us about the surprisingly complex and often remarkably accepting lives of people who lived in medieval Europe and Byzantium. But before we begin this journey together, write in the comments where you are listening from. It's interesting to learn where in the world you are. Also, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe. It helps more than you know. Now dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about medieval monasticism, ancient Christianity, and possibly your next book club's understanding of brotherly love. Chapter 1. The manuscript that changed everything. You're still Brother Thomas, and your hands are shaking slightly as you turn the page of this amazing old book, not from cold, though Byzantine monasteries in mountain areas aren't exactly known for their heating, but from the slow understanding that you're looking at something that officially, according to everything you've been taught back in Winchester, shouldn't exist. The manuscript is labeled rather innocently in Greek, Office for Same-Sex Union, not Spiritual Brotherhood Ceremony. That's definitely just platonic, we promise not. Totally normal friendship, blessing, nothing to see here, just union, an adelphopoiesis, and the more you read, the more your scholarly Latin-trained brain starts making connections to the marriage ceremonies you've witnessed. The discovery of manuscripts like this one, and there were dozens of them scattered across the Orthodox world like time bombs waiting to explode modern beliefs, happened when Yale historian John Boswell started looking around in monastery libraries in the 1980s. Imagine being a historian, expecting to find maybe some nice prayer books or another copy of Augustine's writings, and instead finding what amounts to a medieval same-sex marriage manual. It's like going into your grandmother's attic looking for Christmas decorations and finding her secret past as a punk rock bassist. The manuscript you're holding, let's call it Grotta Ferrata Gamma 2, because historians love names that sound like failed medicines. Dates from the 12th century. The parchment is made from goat skin, which you can tell because sheep parchment doesn't have these special follicle patterns that look like the world's oldest case of goosebumps. The ink is iron gall, that beautiful deep brown-black that will last another 1,000 years if nobody does anything stupid like, say, trying to clean it with modern chemicals. The handwriting is confident and practiced. This wasn't some monk's secret project, hidden from the abbot. This was official church business. Ceremony it describes is interesting in its familiarity. Two men enter the church together. They stand before the altar where the priest asks if they come of their own free will. They place their right hands on the gospel, the same gospel where Christ said things about love that your monastery tends to understand rather selectively. The priest binds their hands together with a stole the same way your sisters' hands were bound to her husband's. They're crowned, actually crowned, with wreaths that the manuscript says should be as for the sacrament of marriage. Then comes the prayer, and sweet suffering saints. What a prayer it is. You read it 3 times to make sure your Greek isn't failing you. The priest calls upon God to bless this union, asking help from Saints Sergius and Bacchus, 2 Roman soldiers who were, as the manuscript carefully puts it, united in life and death. The prayer asks that the 2 men be granted love without offence, without scandal, without hatred. It asks that they be joined together, more in the spirit than in the flesh. That last bit might seem like an escape route, a spiritual out, until you remember that all medieval marriage prayers emphasized spiritual over physical union. Your sister's ceremony included the exact same phrase, but here's where it gets truly interesting, and where you, Brother Thomas, start to sweat despite the mountain cold. The manuscript includes margin notes, the scholarly graffiti of the medieval world where monks wrote their thoughts, complaints, and occasionally drew rude pictures of their abbots. These notes aren't in the formal Greek of the main text. They're in the everyday language of monks who actually performed these ceremonies. One note, in spidery handwriting that suggests advanced age or excessive wine consumption, reads, "Performed for Constantine and John, merchants of Thessalonica. On the feast of St. Demetrius they have kept house together these past 12 years." Another in different ink, but the same hand. The bishop himself blessed their union, though he had words about the extravagance of their feast after. You're discovering what modern historians would take another century to fully understand. These weren't rare, hidden, shameful ceremonies. They were part of the church life of the Byzantine church, recorded in official manuscripts, performed by bishops, celebrated with feasts that apparently sometimes got a bit out of hand. The church you thought you knew, the faith you've devoted your life to, had a whole parallel tradition that somehow got lost in translation as Christianity moved west. The manuscript includes musical notation, those strange Byzantine marks that look like someone sneezed ink onto the page but actually indicate complex melodies. These ceremonies were sung, chanted, turned into sound beauty. You try to hum the melody, but Byzantine musical notation is about as clear as Swedish furniture instructions, and you give up before you accidentally summon something as you carefully turn another page parchment. This old has the tensile strength of an elderly relative's patience. You find an illustration. It's small, about the size of your palm, but the detail is beautiful. 2 haloed men stand before a priest, their hands joined over a gospel book that's been painted with real gold leaf. The halos mean these are saints, not just any random Byzantine bros having a commitment ceremony. The inscription identifies Sergius and Bacchus again, the poster, children for same-sex unions in the Eastern Church. The real archaeological breakthrough came when scholars realized these manuscripts weren't isolated curiosities. Yale's Beinecke Library has one, the Vatican Secret Archives, and yes, that's their actual name because apparently subtlety died with the Roman Empire, has 8 Mount Athos, that peninsula in Greece where women, female, animals, and presumably female mosquitoes are still banned, has dozens. The monastery of St. Catherine, where you're sitting right now, trying not to hyperventilate, has a collection that nobody's fully catalogued because every time scholars try, they find more. Chapter 2. The Brothers Who Lived as One. You've been at St. Catherine's for 3 weeks now, and Brother Demetrius, the elderly librarian who moves like he's personally carrying the weight of Byzantine history on his shoulders, has started to trust you enough, apparently, to show you what he calls the practical documents. These aren't the beautiful ceremonial manuscripts with their gold leaf and musical notation. These are the everyday papers of medieval monastic life, property records, wills, cemetery logs, the receipts of real life. You might say, though in this case the receipts are for something rather more significant than your weekly bread purchase. "You read Greek well enough," Demetrius says in his creaking voice that sounds like parchment being unfolded. "You'll find these instructive." The first document he shows you is a property contract from 1098. It's written on papyrus, cheaper than parchment, which tells you this was routine business, not something special. The contract describes the joint purchase of a vineyard by Michael the scribe and Denicus the goldsmith, united in holy adelphopoiesis. Before God and witnessed by the congregation of Hagia Sophia, they're buying property together as a unit, with inheritance rights that pass to the survivor. You know enough about medieval property law to know that this wasn't something you did with just your bowling buddy, but it's the next line that makes you forget to breathe their household. Blessed by Archbishop John, in the year of our Lord 1089, shall pass complete to whosoever survives, as is the custom with those joined in union 9 years these men had been, living together, recognized by the church. For 9 years before buying this vineyard, you think about Brother William back in Winchester, the way his laugh sounds like bells, the way he insists on checking your copying work even though you both know your Greek is better than his. You think about 9 years, the archaeological evidence for these relationships extends far beyond manuscripts in the 1990s. Excavations at Byzantine cemetery sites started showing something curious: male skeletons buried in shared graves, not in the mass burial pits used for monks or the poor, but in carefully constructed tombs meant for families. The positioning of the bodies, facing each other, sometimes with hands that had been placed together, matched the burial patterns of married couples. One tomb discovered near Constantinople and dating from the 11th century contained 2 male skeletons along with grave goods that told a story. One man had been a soldier, his bones showed the special, where patterns of someone who'd spent years in armor, and he'd been buried with a ceremonial sword. The other had been a craftsman, likely a jeweler based on the severe arthritis in his finger joints, and the tiny magnifying crystal found near his skull. Different social classes, different professions, but buried together with expensive grave goods that someone who loved them had provided you. We're reading about these men, separated from you by 2 centuries, but suddenly, immediate and real, when Brother Demetrius returns with another stack of documents. "Since you're interested," he says with what might be a knowing smile, though his face has so many wrinkles, it's hard to tell what any particular look means. This new stack contains letters between monasteries discussing the plans of ceremonies. One from 1156 reads, "Brother Paul will arrive before the feast of the Dormition, accompanied by the Syrian merchant with whom he seeks union. Please prepare the chapel and ensure the choir knows the proper hymns." The merchant speaks little Greek, but Brother Paul assures us his intentions are sincere. A Syrian merchant and a Byzantine monk. You try to imagine the conversations that led to this. The courtship. Was there a courtship? The decision to make their relationship official before God. The letter is annoyingly matter-of-fact, treating this as no more unusual than any other administrative matter. "Please ensure adequate wine for the feast after the merchant's family will attend, some 20 souls, and they observe dietary restrictions. We must accommodate the merchant's family, 20 people traveling to see their relative united with a monk." This wasn't a secret shame hidden in the shadows of the cloister. This was a celebration that required catering arrangements. You find yourself looking for more personal details in these documents, some hint of the emotional reality behind the legal language. And then, like a gift from the scholarly gods, you find it's a margin note in a prayer book written in shaky Latin by someone who clearly wasn't comfortable with the language but needed to express something that Greek couldn't quite capture. "Johannes, my heart, departed this life on the calends of March. We were joined 18 years. The brothers say I must not grieve as those without hope, but they did not know his laughter. I have asked to be buried beside him when God calls me home. Prior Marcus has agreed soon. My beloved, soon you have to set the manuscript down because your hands are shaking again, and this time it's definitely not the cold 18 years. The writer died 2 years later, according to Demetrius, who's watching you read with those ancient eyes that have seen 1,000 scholars pass through these archives. The cemetery records confirm they were buried together. He says quietly, plot 47. Beneath the olive tree, it still bears fruit. The evidence keeps mounting. Financial records showing joint donations to monasteries, witness lists for various ceremonies where the same pairs of names appear together decade after decade, always listed as name and name, united in God tax records because death and taxes were as certain in Byzantium as anywhere else, showing households headed by two men taxed at the same rate as married couples, one particularly. Interesting document from 1203 is a letter of complaint from a bishop to the Patriarch of Constantinople. He's not complaining about the ceremonies themselves, but about the fee structure. Apparently, some priests were charging more for adelphopoiesis ceremonies than for regular marriages, taking advantage of the brothers' desire for holy union to enrich themselves. Unduly, the Patriarch's response, archived in the same collection, sets a standard fee schedule and reminds all priests that the sacrament of union, in whatever form God calls it to take, must be available. To all the faithful sacrament, the Patriarch called it a sacrament. You're not sure what to do with this information. Your whole worldview is reshaping itself like clay on a potter's wheel, operated by a drunken angel. Chapter 3. The Sacred and the Intimate. The morning light filters through the narrow windows of St. Catherine's Library, casting long shadows across the manuscript. You've been studying since before dawn. You haven't been sleeping well, not because of the hard monastery beds, you're used to those, but because every document you read opens another door in your mind, and behind each door is a question you're not sure you're ready to answer. Today's revelation comes in the form of an illustrated manuscript from 1098, what historians will later call the Paris Graecus, 1347. The illustration shows two men in Byzantine court dress, the kind with so much purple dye and gold thread that wearing it today would cost more than most. People's houses, they're standing before an altar, hands joined, while Christ himself hovers above them in a golden mandorla, blessing their union, the Greek. Inscription reads, Christ blessing the union of saints, but someone has added in smaller letters below, as performed for the emperor's nephew, the emperor's. Nephew not some minor merchant or provincial nobody, but Byzantine royalty having his same-sex union blessed in what was presumably the most public, politically significant ceremony possible. You wonder what? The wedding gifts were like, congratulations on your blessed union, here's a small province, and 300 pounds of gold. The casual acceptance implied by this image is staggering. Brother Demetrius shuffles over with his morning bread and weak wine breakfast. Of champions and elderly librarians everywhere, you're finding our traditions educational, he asks, and there's definitely amusement in those rheumy eyes. Now educational, you repeat, because what else can you say that you're having a complete religious crisis before your morning prayers that you've started? Looking at Brother William's letters in a new light, that you're wondering if the flutter in your stomach when he smiled at you before you left was just travel anxiety or something that Byzantine Christians would have had a sacrament for you. I've found church manuals that include adelphopoiesis right alongside, regular marriage ceremonies, baptisms and funerals, the basic life ceremonies of the church, and this was just there, part of the menu. Yes, we do baptisms on Sundays, marriages on Saturdays, and same-sex unions by appointment, because the bishop likes to personally oversee those, and his schedule is a nightmare. The most striking document you found is a religious essay from the 10th century addressing the question of whether men united in adelphopoiesis could also serve as priests. The answer, after much biblical quotation and philosophical wandering that would make Thomas Aquinas jealous, is basically, of course they can, don't be ridiculous. David and Jonathan were united in love surpassing that of women, and David was God's own chosen, if anything, too. Priests united in holy brotherhood can better serve their congregation as they understand the sacrament of union from within David and Jonathan. The essay goes on for pages about them and about other biblical pairs, Saints Sergius and Bacchus. Obviously they're the poster boys of the whole movement, but also Saints Cosmas and Damian, Polyeuctus and Neokos, and a dozen other pairs you've never heard of, each with their own feast day, their own icons showing them standing together, haloed and holding hands, or with arms around each other's shoulders in a way that medieval art usually reserved for married couples. Or the Virgin and Child, you find yourself studying the artistic styles with new eyes. In Western art, you've been taught two figures standing close together with intertwined hands or shared halos indicates marriage or divine unity, but you've seen dozens of icons like this in Byzantine churches. You always assumed they were just very good friends, brothers in Christ, spiritual companions who just happened to be buried together and commemorated in paired feast. days, and shown in exactly the same artistic styles as married couples because the excuse-making part of your brain has given up and gone for a lie down. But it's not just the art and theology that's getting to you, it's the practical details, the lived reality these documents reveal you found household inventories from. Couples united in these ceremonies, shopping lists essentially, but they paint such a human picture: 2 beds, joined appears in multiple inventories, kitchen. Supplies sufficient for a household of 2 men and their servants. One particularly touching inventory from 1189 includes matching ivory combs, purchased in Alexandria, and paired wine cups, silver, inscribed with their names. Matching ivory combs you think about the bone comb in your own cell, functional and plain. You think about someone caring enough about their appearance, about looking good for their partner, to buy matching ivory combs from Alexandria. The tenderness of that detail sits in your chest. Like a warm stone, there's a letter from a mother to her son, dated 1147, that Brother Demetrius translates for you because it's in a dialect you don't recognize. She's writing to congratulate him on his upcoming union, to say she's sending olive oil and wine for the feast, and to gently remind him that just because Theodore is beautiful as the morning star doesn't mean he should neglect his responsibilities to the family business. Your father and I were young once too, and we know how love can make fools of even the wisest men. But Theodore seems practical, which you need. My dreamy son, bring him to visit after the harvest. A mother writing to her son about his male partner, the same way mothers have written about their children's spouses since writing was invented. Gentle teasing, practical advice, and an invitation to visit. The normalcy of it is almost more shocking than the ceremonies themselves. You find contracts for adelphopoiesis, ceremonies that include what can only be described as prenuptials. If God should call one home before the other, the vineyard in Thrace shall remain with the survivor. Should discord arise between them, the bishop shall mediate. These weren't just spiritual ceremonies, they were legal frameworks for shared lives, with all the messy, practical, beautiful complexity. That entails one document makes you laugh out loud, disturbing the holy silence of the library. It's a letter from an abbot to a bishop complaining that 2 of his monks, who were united in adelphopoiesis, have requested cells next to each other, and this is disrupting the traditional arrangement by seniority. The bishop's response is essentially, deal with it, love is inconvenient, rearrange yourselves. You imagine the grumbling of monks forced to move their belongings, because brother so-and-so wanted to be closer to his beloved. Some things apparently are universal across all centuries. Chapter 4. The ceremony itself. You've been putting off reading the actual ceremony in detail. Something about it feels too intimate, too much like peering through a keyhole into someone else's sacred moment, but Brother Demetrius has brought you a manuscript that he says you need to see, the most complete version of the ceremony they have, with notes from multiple priests who performed it. If you want to understand, he says, you must see how it was done. The manuscript is beautiful, written in gold and red ink on purple-dyed parchment, which means this was an imperial commission. Someone with serious money wanted this ceremony preserved in the most luxurious way possible. The margins are decorated with twining vines and flowers and tiny birds that look suspiciously like they're kissing. Medieval scribes, it turns out, had opinions about subtlety and chose to ignore all of them. The ceremony begins with the 2 men entering the church together, already a departure from standard marriage ceremonies where the bride was brought to the groom. They walk as equals, side by side, to stand before the altar. The priest asks them 3 times if they come freely, without force, and with pure hearts 3 times, like Peter denying Christ but in reverse. A triple affirmation of choice. Then comes something that makes you sit up straight. The priest places the gospel book on the altar and has the men place their right hands upon it, one on top of the other. But here's the thing, the manuscript specifies which gospel passage should be open. John 15:12-17. This is my commandment, that ye love one another. As I have loved you, greater love hath no man than this, that a man lay down his life for his friends. You know this passage, every monk knows this passage, but you've never heard it used in a marriage context before the notes. Explain. As Christ loved his disciples with perfect love, so these men love each other. As the apostles were bound to Christ and to each other, so these 2 are bound. The prayers that follow are amazing. They call upon every pair of male saints who were known for their devoted friendship. Sergius and Bacchus Obviously, they're like the patron saints of the whole operation, but also Peter and Paul, who the prayer describes as united in faith and love. Philip and Bartholomew, even David and Jonathan get a mention with a prayer that the two men being united might love each other with love wonderful. Passing the love of women, that's a direct biblical quote, and it would make certain theologians back home deeply uncomfortable, but here it is in gold ink, authorized by the church, spoken over two men joining there lives together. The physical elements of the ceremony are interestingly similar to marriage. The priest binds their hands with his stole, they exchange kisses. The manuscript specifies the kiss of peace. As is holy and proper, they drink from the same communion cup 3 times. They're led around the altar 3 times while the congregation sings, but then comes something unique. The priest takes 2 crowns, not the flower wreaths used in regular marriages, but actual metal crowns, the kind used to crown martyrs in icons. He places them on the men's heads and says, "The servants of God, name and name, are crowned for life together, in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit, crowned for life together." The manuscript includes a note here. Some priests say crowned for union, but this is the older form, meaning this ceremony had been evolving, developing, being refined over centuries. The congregation's role is interesting too. They sing specific hymns, including one that translates roughly to, "You who established the foundations of the earth and joined the heavens with harmony, who gave to your martyrs Sergius and Bacchus, one soul though 2 bodies, bless now these your servants, joined not by nature, but by faith, and the Holy Spirit not by nature, but by faith." It's an interesting distinction, acknowledging that this union is chosen, created, blessed into being, rather than assumed to be natural in a weird way. It's more romantic. This is a love that didn't have to exist, but was brought into being through choice and dedication and divine blessing. Chapter 5. When it all went wrong. You've been at St. Catherine's for 2 months now, and you've started to piece together not just what was, but what happened to it. The story of how adelphopoiesis disappeared from Western Christianity is written in the gaps between documents, in the sudden silence where there used to be ceremony. The last Western mention you can find is from 1187 in southern Italy. After that, nothing but the Eastern Church continued performing these ceremonies right up to now. Actually, Brother Demetrius mentioned casually yesterday that the bishop performed one last month for 2 merchants from Cyprus. You nearly choked on your breakfast gruel, which would have been a waste of perfectly mediocre gruel. The split seems to have started with the Fourth Lateran Council in 1215. You found a copy of their declarations, and there it is, buried in the midst of rules about confession and communion. Marriage is between one man and one woman for the procreation of children and the avoidance of fornication. No mention of adelphopoiesis specifically, but the emphasis on procreation as the primary purpose of marriage would have made same-sex unions theologically awkward, but the real blow came from an unexpected source, property law. You found letters between bishops from the 1220s discussing the problem of inherited property in same-sex unions when 2 men were united and one died, who inherited the surviving partner, obviously according to centuries of precedent. But as European inheritance law became more complex, more tied to blood relations and legitimate heirs, this became inconvenient. One letter from a French bishop to Rome in 1234 complains that certain men are entering into these Eastern unions for the sole purpose of avoiding proper inheritance taxes and keeping property from rightful heirs. Ah yes, the classic medieval problem of people using marriage for financial benefits. Shocking, unprecedented, definitely only a problem with same-sex unions. The Black Death, weirdly, also played a role. The massive population loss meant that reproduction became not just important, but desperately necessary. Unions that couldn't produce children were seen as wasteful, selfish. Even you found sermons from the 1350s condemning barren unions and calling for all Christians to do their duty to repopulate Christendom. Hard to argue your same-sex union is blessed by God when the priest is essentially telling everyone to make babies for Jesus. But perhaps the saddest document you found is a personal letter from 1389, hidden in the back of a prayer book. It's in English. Your heart jumped when you recognized your native tongue. A monk writing to his beloved brother in Christ about how they can no longer be united as they wished, because such ceremonies are no longer performed in our land. He suggests they might travel to Constantinople, where the old ways are still honoured, but knows it's impossible the letter ends. We must be content with the union of our souls, though the Church will. Not bless what God has clearly wrought. You sit with that letter for a long time, thinking about the man who wrote it, the man who received it, the relationship. That existed without recognition, without blessing, without the crown and the cup and the singing congregation. You think about Brother William. Chapter 6. The thread that connects us all. Your time at St. Catherine's is ending tomorrow. You begin the long journey back to Winchester, back to your copying desk and your narrow cell, and Brother William's unnecessarily frequent visits to check your Greek translations. But tonight, you're sitting in the chapel, where these ceremonies were performed, where they're still performed, looking at the icons of Sergius and Bacchus that flank the altar. They're beautiful. These Saint Sergius has a soldier's bearing even in paint, shoulders broad, and stance-firm Bacchus is softer, younger-looking, with an expression of gentle intelligence. They're holding hands, of course, and their halos overlap in a golden infinity symbol that some artists thought was subtle between them, almost. Invisible, unless you know to look for it, is a tiny red thread connecting their hearts, the thread of fate, Brother Demetrius called it. The bond that cannot be broken. You've spent 3 months discovering a hidden history, a tradition that your church has forgotten, or chosen to forget you've read about. Merchants and monks, soldiers and scholars, men who loved each other and found a way to have that love recognized, blessed, celebrated. You've seen their property contracts and their love letters, their burial sites and their shopping lists. You've discovered that what you thought was impossible was once commonplace. What you assumed was forbidden was once sacramental. The question now is what you do with this knowledge. You think about the manuscript you're carrying back to England, a gift from Brother Demetrius. It's not one of the fancy ceremonial texts. Those are too valuable to leave the monastery. It's a simple prayer book, but tucked inside is a copy of the adelphopoiesis. Ceremony, written in your own hand over the past weeks for preservation, Demetrius said with a wink knowledge, should not be lost. Think about Brother William, about the letter you've written but haven't sent, the one where you try to explain what you've discovered. How do you tell someone that the thing you've both been carefully not discussing has a 1,000-year history of being discussed, celebrated, blessed? How do you say, apparently, we could have been married if we'd been born 3 centuries earlier, or 1,000 miles to the east? The funny thing is, the more you've learned about these unions, the more you've realized they weren't some radical departure from Christian tradition. They were woven into it, part of the same fabric that included regular marriage, celibacy, and religious devotion. The men in these unions weren't rebels or heretics. They were Christians who loved each other and wanted that love recognized by their community and their God. One of the last documents you read was a sermon from a Byzantine priest in 1298. Defending the practice against Western criticism Christ commanded us to love, he wrote, he did not specify the precise organizational structure that love should take if 2 men wish to formalize their devotion to each other before God, to promise fidelity and support, to share their lives and property in prayers. How is this contrary to the gospel? Did not Christ himself say that wherever 2 or 3 are gathered in his name, he is there among them? Why should it matter if those 2 are men, bound by love and blessed by the church? Why indeed you stand to leave the chapel, but something makes you turn back. You kneel before the altar, the same altar where countless pairs have stood over the centuries, and you pray not for answers. You found plenty of those, not for courage that will come, or it won't. You pray for Brother William, wherever he is at this moment, probably correcting some novice's Latin and thinking about you, thinking about Greek manuscripts. You pray for all the men who stood here before you, who made vows and exchanged kisses and wore crowns and went home to lives that looked remarkably like everyone else's, full of joy and sorrow, arguments about money, reconciliations over wine, the daily business of loving someone for decades. You pray for the ones who came after the ceremony, stopped, who had to find other ways to honor what they felt, who wrote letters in the margins of prayer books and hoped someone someday would understand. And you pray for those yet to come, in times you can't imagine, when perhaps these discoveries will be made again, when scholars will find these manuscripts and say, look what we didn't know. We'd lost. Tomorrow you go home, you'll deliver your official report about Byzantine copying techniques and manuscript preservation. You'll mention perhaps some interesting theological variations you observed. You might even, if you were feeling brave, Show the prayer book to Brother William, look, you might say, an interesting historical curiosity. But tonight, in this chapel, where love has been blessed in all its forms for 1,000 years, you allow yourself to imagine standing here with William, your hands bound together, crowns on your heads, the congregation singing as you walk 3 times around. The altar, you imagine the feast after, the toasts, the gentle jokes about which of you is more likely to burn the bread. You imagine a life recognized, celebrated. Blessed, it's a beautiful dream. And who knows, dreams, like manuscripts, have a way of surviving longer than anyone expects. Sometimes they just need to be hidden for a while, preserved in the margins, waiting for the right moment to be discovered again. Brother Demetrius finds you there an hour later, still kneeling, still praying, or perhaps just thinking he doesn't say anything, just lights another candle and places it before the icon of Sergius and Bacchus. The 2 saints smile down at you, eternal in their love, patient in their waiting, hands forever. Joined in golden light, history is long. The old monk says, finally what is forgotten can be remembered, what is lost can be found. You nod, standing on knees that protest the cold stone. Tomorrow you travel home, but tonight you're exactly where you need to be, holding centuries of love in your hands, carrying stories that refuse to be silenced, bearing witness to the fact that love, in all its forms, finds a way even if it takes 1,000 years. Even if it has to hide in manuscripts and marginalia, in archaeological fragments and forgotten prayers, love finds a way. It always has the discovery of. These adelphopoiesis ceremonies, hidden in plain sight in monastery libraries from Mount Athos to St. Catherine's, reveals that history is never as simple. As we're taught, these manuscripts, with their gold leaf and careful calligraphy, their margin notes and shopping lists, their love letters and legal contracts, tell us that human love has always been more complex, more beautiful, and more diverse than any single narrative can contain. Until our next archaeological adventure together, this is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Sweet dreams, fellow explorers. Don't forget to subscribe, and may your rest be filled with wonder at the remarkable tapestry of human history. But for now, stay tuned as we have a bonus story coming right up, read especially for you by our guest narrator.
The real Atlantis and the volcano that buried a world. Let's talk about Atlantis. Go on. Picture it, you've got gleaming crystal towers, wise philosopher kings, and tastefully draped robes, maybe some highly advanced, vaguely magical technology. Powered by, what was it again, sunlight, good vibes, a giant quartz crystal humming ominously. In the city center for generations, this has been the go-to image of the ultimate lost civilization. It's the mythical equivalent of that one friend who peaked in high school and won't stop talking about it. A golden age of peace, prosperity, and suspiciously good dental hygiene, all tragically swallowed by the sea in a single dramatic day. It's a fantastic story. The only problem is, most of it was invented by a failed congressman from Minnesota in 1882. Seriously, while Plato gave us the name and the basic premise of a powerful island nation that ticked off the gods and sank. The whole shimmering crystal-powered sci-fi utopia version comes to us from a gentleman named Ignatius Donnelly. His book was a sensation, a 19th century version of a viral conspiracy theory video, and it's his vision, not Plato's, that has lodged itself in our collective consciousness. It's less an ancient mystery and more a piece of Victorian fan fiction that got wildly out of hand. It's the historical equivalent of believing the movie Stargate is a documentary. That glorious, hyper-advanced Atlantis you think you know was never real tonight. You are a citizen of the place that almost certainly was. You live on a crescent-shaped island in the Aegean Sea called Thera. Sometime around 1628 BCE, your city is a bustling port called Akrotiri, a jewel of the Minoan civilization. You live in a 3-story townhouse with running water and vibrant paintings on the walls. You are a highly skilled artisan, a merchant, a sailor, a priestess, a person living at the absolute peak of a complex, wealthy, and astonishingly sophisticated culture. You are, for all intents and purposes, a resident of the real Atlantis, and its final invoice, delivered by the planet itself, is about to come due the proof of your existence, the receipts left at the scene are so spectacular they feel impossible. In the late 1960s, archaeologists on the modern Greek island of Santorini began uncovering your city. Akrotiri, buried under 200 feet of volcanic ash and pumice. It was a Bronze Age Pompeii, but in some ways even more astonishing, they found entire city blocks. With buildings still standing 3 stories high, they found workshops, kitchens, and bedrooms, and on the walls, they found your art, stunning, vibrant frescoes of playful monkeys, elegant priestesses, and fleets of ships sailing on a sparkling blue sea. They found your pottery, your furniture, your looms with the weights still attached. It was an entire world, flash frozen in time, preserved so perfectly that it forced historians to completely rewrite the story of the ancient Aegean. It was the ultimate archaeological mic drop, this discovery. Made on the island now, known as Santorini, reveals something amazing about the incredible sophistication and the ultimate fragility of the Minoan world. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in the Bronze Age Aegean now. Dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about lost civilizations. The first thing you're aware of is the light. It's not the harsh, direct glare of midday. It's a softer, more forgiving light, filtered through the fine translucent fabric covering the window of your second story. Sleeping quarters. It's the kind of light that paints the plaster walls in hues of pearl and soft apricot. You stir on your bed, a simple wooden frame strung with leather straps topped with a wool-stuffed mattress. It's comfortable enough, a small luxury in a world built on stone and earth. The air is warm and carries the familiar 3-part scent of your city, the sharp tang of salt from the sea, the earthy smell of clay dust from the pottery workshops down the lane, and the faint, sweet perfume of the crocuses and lilies that grow wild on the hillsides beyond the city walls. This is the smell of home. This is the smell of Akrotiri. You stretch, your joints popping in a satisfyingly familiar way. Your home is what archaeologists thousands of years from now will call the West House to you. It's just home. It's a narrow 3-story building made of stone and timber, its walls plastered smooth and painted a clean, calming white. You share it with your family, your partner, perhaps a child or 2, and maybe an aging parent. It's a vertical life. You sleep on the second floor, work and socialize on the ground floor, and store your surplus olive oil and grain in the cool, dark basement. It's efficient, modern living. In fact, your house has a feature that would make a Roman engineer 2,000 years later nod in grudging respect. An indoor bathroom, a small chamber with a clay toilet connected by terracotta pipes to a sewage system running beneath the city streets. It's a small private miracle, a testament to the quiet ingenuity of your people, the Minoans. It's a running joke among the sailors who visit your port from less civilized places. They marvel at your multi-story homes and your plumbing more than they do the grand frescoes in the public buildings. To them, you're living in the future. You swing your legs off the bed, your feet finding the cool stone floor. You dress simply, a linen kilt, a wide belt, and leather sandals. The fashion is practical, designed for the warm climate and an active life. Today is a work day. You are a fresco painter, a master of your craft. Your job is to transform the blank plaster walls of the city's elite into vibrant scenes of life, nature, and ceremony. It's a good trade, respected, and well compensated. Your patrons are the wealthy ship owners and merchants who have grown rich from trade. The Aegean Sea is your civilization's superhighway. Its internet, its lifeblood. Your ships, sleek and high-prowed, carry pottery, wine, olive oil, and saffron to the far corners of the known world, to Egypt, to the Levant, to the mainland of Greece. In return, they bring back copper from Cyprus, tin from Anatolia, ivory from Africa, and most importantly, new ideas. Akrotiri is a hub, a cosmopolitan center of trade and culture, and its wealth is displayed on the very walls you are paid to paint you. Head downstairs. The ground floor is a single large room serving as a kitchen, a living area, and a workshop. Light streams in from the large central window, illuminating dust motes dancing in the air. Someone has already lit the hearth, and a simple breakfast of barley bread, olives, and goat cheese is laid out on a low wooden table. The pottery you eat from is beautiful, a far cry from the crude functional stuff used by your more warlike neighbors, the Mycenaeans on the mainland. Your plates are thin and delicate, painted with swirling octopuses, elegant lilies, or dolphins leaping from a swirling sea. Everything in your culture, from your architecture to your clothes to your kitchenware, seems to be infused with a love of natural, flowing beauty. There is a sense of lightness, of joy that permeates your world. You have no need for massive defensive walls like the grim fortresses of Mycenae or Tyrants. Your walls are the sea, and your defense is your powerful navy. Your society isn't built on conquest, it's built on commerce. It feels safe, it feels permanent. After your simple meal, you gather your tools. This is the ritual that begins your day. You have your pouches of powdered pigments, ground from minerals and earth, red and yellow from ochre, black from carbon, white from lime, and, the most precious of all, a brilliant blue derived from Egyptian copper silicate, an expensive import that your wealthiest clients demand. You have your brushes made from animal hair and your trowels for smoothing the plaster. Your current commission is a big one. You're working on a room in the house of a wealthy merchant whose ships dominate the saffron trade. He wants a scene that reflects his status and the source of his wealth. He wants a masterpiece. You walk out into the narrow, winding street. The city is already awake and alive with activity. The air hums with the sound of voices, the clatter of workshop, tools, the braying of a donkey being loaded with amphorae of wine. The streets are not straight and wide like those of some other cities. They are an organic tangle, paved with cobblestones and just wide enough for two people to walk side by side. The buildings crowd in, their upper stories sometimes jutting out over the street, creating shaded canyons that offer relief from the summer sun. You greet your neighbors, a potter, a weaver, a shipwright. There's a sense of community here, of interconnectedness. Everyone has a role to play in the intricate machinery of the city. You pass a small square where children are playing with clay tops, their laughter echoing off the plastered walls. Is a profoundly peaceful scene. What you don't know, what you can't possibly comprehend, is that in a few years, this exact scene, the houses, the square, the echoes of laughter, will be buried under a mountain of volcanic rock, preserved as a silent memorial to a world about to vanish. The ground beneath your feet, the very foundation of your island paradise, is a sleeping giant, and it's beginning to stir. You arrive at your work site, the mansion your patron calls home. It's a grand affair, much larger than your own house, with multiple wings and a central light well to illuminate the interior rooms. Your patron meets you at the door. He's a man whose soft hands and expanding waistline speak of a life spent counting profits. Rather than hauling ropes, he's demanding it, as all rich men are, but he pays well and on time. He wants to see progress. You lead him to the room you've been working on, a large space on the second floor that will likely be used for entertaining guests. The process of creating a fresco is a race against time. The term itself, fresco, means fresh in Italian, a language that won't exist for another 3,000 years, but the principle is the same. You must apply your pigments to a layer of wet lime plaster. As the plaster dries, a chemical reaction occurs, locking the colors into the wall itself. It's not just paint on a surface, it becomes part of the wall's very substance. This means you can only work on a small section at a time. An area you can complete before the plaster sets. It requires speed, precision, and a complete lack of an undo button. There's no scraping it off and starting. Again, every brushstroke is permanent. Your assistants have already prepared the wall, applying a fresh, smooth layer of plaster. The air is cool and damp with the smell of wet lime today. You're working on a section depicting young women gathering saffron from crocus flowers. A scene of serene beauty and immense economic importance. Saffron, the tiny red stigmas of the crocus flower, is worth more than its weight in gold. It's used as a spice, a dye, and a medicine. It's the engine of your patron's fortune, and he wants everyone who enters this room to know it. You begin to work. You take a lump of red ochre pigment, mix it with water to the consistency of cream, and dip your brush. You start with the flowing robes of one of the saffron gatherers. Your hand moves with the practiced confidence of a master. The lines are fluid, dynamic, capturing the sense of movement. As the woman bends to her task, there's a certain style to Minoan, art that is uniquely yours, unlike the stiff, formal side-view figures of the Egyptians or the rigid, militaristic art of the Mycenaeans. Your figures are full of life and motion. They twist and turn, their hair flows. Their limbs are graceful. You paint people as they are, or perhaps as you wish them to be, vibrant, elegant, and at peace with their world. You switch to yellow for the crocuses, then to black to outline the delicate features of a woman's face. The work is all-consuming. You are in a state of flow, a deep concentration where the outside world fades away. There is only you, the wall, the pigments, and the image emerging from the plaster. You don't think about the rent, or the argument you had with your cousin, or the strange deep rumble you felt in the earth last week. Ah, yes. The rumble, it had been brief, a low-frequency vibration that seemed to come from the very bones of the island the old-timers dismissed. The earth-shaker god is restless, they'd said, pouring a small libation of wine onto the ground to appease him. Earthquakes were a fact of life in the Aegean. You had felt them before. But this one felt different, deeper, more profound. It was followed by a faint, acrid smell on the wind, like a smith's forge. But without the fire, most people had already forgotten about it, distracted by the rhythms of daily life and commerce. But the memory of it sits in the back of your mind, a small, dark seed of unease. Your patron comes to check on your progress. He grunts in approval. He's particularly pleased with the shade of blue you're using for the sky. He has no idea that the imported Egyptian mineral required to make that blue cost him more than your entire year's supply of wine. He just knows. It looks expensive. He claps you on the shoulder, a gesture of satisfaction that leaves a slightly greasy handprint on your tunic and leaves you to your work. As the plaster begins to dry, you add the final details, a delicate earring on one of the figures, the individual petals of a crocus flower, a playful curl in a lock of hair. The section is complete. You stand back and admire your work. It's good. The figures seem to breathe for a moment. You feel a surge of pride, a sense of timelessness. You are creating something beautiful, something permanent. The irony of that thought is an invisible cosmic joke waiting. For its punchline, you are painting a vision of an eternal idyllic world on the wall of a tomb, but you don't know that to you it's just another day at the office. A very, very good day lunch is brought to you. More bread, some dried figs, and a cup of watered-down wine. You eat while studying the remaining blank sections of the wall, planning your next moves. The afternoon sun is beginning to beat down, and the city outside is entering its drowsy siesta phase. The frantic energy of the morning market has subsided, replaced by a calmer hum. From your high vantage point, you can see over the rooftops to the harbor. The sea is a brilliant, almost impossible blue, dotted with the white sails of merchant ships and the smaller, darker shapes of fishing boats. Your harbor is magnificent, a perfect caldera formed by a volcanic eruption. So ancient it exists only in myth, your whole island is, in fact, the remnant of a colossal volcano. It is the source of your fertile soil, the dramatic cliffs of your coastline. The very ground you stand upon it is your creator, and soon it will be your executioner. But for now, all is calm. You finish your lunch and prepare to mix a new batch of plaster for the afternoons. Work, you think about the evening ahead. Perhaps a walk down to the harbor to watch the ships come in. Maybe you'll listen to a storyteller in the town square, reciting epic poems of gods and heroes, a simple, pleasant end to a simple, pleasant day, and then it happens, it starts not with a sound, but with a feeling, a sudden violent lurch, as if a colossal hand has seized the island and shaken it with furious intent. It is not a rumble this time, it is a convulsion. The floor beneath you heaves, the walls groan, the pot of water you were using to mix plaster slides off its bench and smashes on the floor, the sound lost in the deafening roar that seems to come from everywhere at once. Your first instinct is pure animal terror. You grab onto the wall you were just painting, your knuckles white as the world tilts and sways around you. Dust and bits of plaster rain down from the ceiling outside. You hear a sound you will never forget, the collective scream of 1,000 people, a chorus of pure fear. The shaking lasts for what feels like an eternity, but is probably less than a minute when it stops. The silence that follows is somehow more terrifying than the noise. It is a dead, ringing silence, punctuated by the distant sound of a collapsing wall, the crying of a child. You are breathing heavily, your heart hammering. Against your ribs, your beautiful, serene fresco of the saffron gatherers is now marred by a spider web of cracks that have split the plaster. Your patron's magnificent house, a symbol of wealth and permanence, feels fragile, violated. You stumble out of the room and down the stairs, which are now littered with fallen pottery and debris. Your patron and his family are huddled in the central courtyard, their faces pale with shock. Nobody is hurt, not seriously, but the psychological damage is immense. The fundamental assumption of their lives, that the ground beneath their feet is solid and reliable, has been shattered. You run out into the street. The scene is one of controlled chaos. People are emerging from their homes, checking on their neighbors. Some are weeping. Others are praying. The beautiful, orderly city of this morning is now a scene of damage and fear. A section of rooftop from a nearby house has slid into the street, blocking the lane. The air is thick with dust, but as you look around, you notice something remarkable. Your people are not panicking blindly. They are organized. They are resilient. They have dealt with earthquakes before. Community leaders are already directing people towards the open squares, away from the danger of falling debris. Families are helping families, pulling neighbors from damaged homes. There is fear, yes, but there is also a deep instinctual knowledge of what to do. Your society is not just artistically sophisticated, it is socially robust. But this is not just another earthquake. As the dust begins to settle, you look up towards the mountain that dominates the center of your island. Thin, dark plume of smoke is rising from its peak. It's not the gentle wisp of a shepherd's fire. It's a greasy black column ascending into the serene blue sky like a dark omen, and the smell you noticed weeks ago, the faint scent of sulfur, is now thick and suffocating in the air. The giant is no longer stirring. The giant is waking up. The days that follow are a blur of anxiety and uncertainty. The earth never truly settles. Small tremors continue to rock the island, constant unnerving reminders of the power simmering beneath you. Each one sends a fresh jolt of adrenaline through the populace, fraying nerves that are already stretched to their breaking point. The plume of smoke from the central mountain grows thicker, darker at night. It glows with a terrifying, dull red light. As if the mountain itself is breathing embers, the air tastes of ash, normal. Life grinds to a halt. The workshops are silent. The looms are still. No. One is thinking about painting frescoes or throwing pots. The only work being done is the clearing of rubble and the patching up of damaged homes, but even this feels temporary, futile. A profound sense of dread has settled over the city. You gather with your family and neighbors in the squares, speaking in hushed tones, sharing rumors and fears as the earth-shaker god. Truly forsaken you, what great transgression have you committed to earn his wrath? The priests and priestesses perform rituals, sacrificing goats and pouring endless libations. But the mountain does not quiet. The ground continues to tremble. This is the turning point. This is the moment of decision. The archaeological evidence here is stunning. In what it doesn't show when your city of Akrotiri was finally excavated. Archaeologists found no human remains, none. They found no skeletons crushed in their homes like at Pompeii. They also found very few precious objects, no hoards of gold or silver jewelry, no caches of valuable imported goods. What they found was a city whose inhabitants had clearly seen the writing on the wall and made the most intelligent decision possible. They left, so you make the choice. Or rather, the choice is made for you by the collective wisdom of your community. It becomes clear that the island is no longer safe. The mountain is not just angry. It is dying, and it intends to take you with it. An evacuation is organized. This is not a panicked flight. It is an orderly, though deeply sorrowful, retreat. The very ships that were the source of your prosperity now become your only means of salvation. You go back to your home, to the West House, one last time. The decision of what to take is agonizing. Your life is here, embedded in the objects and spaces of this house. You can't take the house itself. You can't take the loom your mother taught you on, or the large storage jars in the basement filled with this year's olive oil. You must choose. You pack a small bag with what is most essential: some dried food, water skin, a warm cloak. You take a few of your finest brushes, the tools of your trade, the core of your identity. You look at the small, beautiful cups in your kitchen, the ones painted with the leaping dolphins. You leave them. You look at the heavy bronze cauldron by the hearth. You leave it. Anything heavy, anything that will slow you down must be abandoned. Your life is now more valuable than your possessions. It's a lesson that wealth and comfort have allowed you to forget. A lesson the trembling earth is now teaching you with brutal clarity. There are no tearful, dramatic goodbyes. On the street, the time for that is past. There is only a grim shared purpose. You and your family join the stream of people heading towards the harbor. The procession is quiet, somber. You carry your youngest child. Your partner carries your meager supplies. You don't look back at your home. You can't. It's too painful. The city you are leaving is a ghost town, full of the material possessions of your life, but empty of life itself. You are leaving everything you have ever known at the harbor. The scene is one of immense organized activity. The ship captains, the same men who haggled with you over the price of blue pigment, are now your saviors. They direct the loading of the boats with calm authority. Women, children, and the elderly are boarded first. There is no pushing, no shoving. There is a deep communal understanding that you will all survive this together or not. At all, you find a place on the deck of a broad-beamed merchant vessel, squeezed between another family and a stack of coiled ropes. The deck is crammed with humanity, a floating microcosm of your city. As the ship's crewmen cast off the mooring lines and raise the simple square sail, you finally allow yourself to look back. Your city, Akrotiri, stands against the backdrop of the smoking mountain. From this distance, it still looks beautiful. A cascade of whitewashed buildings clinging to the shore. It looks peaceful, permanent. It is the greatest lie you have ever seen. You watch as the shoreline recedes, as the details of your home, your street, your world dissolve into the distance. Are a refugee. You have your family, you have your life, but you have no home. You are sailing away from the only world you have ever known, and you are sailing towards a complete unknown. You wonder where you will go. To Crete, the heart of the Minoan world, to another smaller island. Will you be welcomed? How will you start again? The questions are overwhelming, but for now, there is only one imperative. Get away from the mountain you and thousands of your fellow citizens are now. On the water, a small flotilla of hope and sorrow, bobbing on the Aegean Sea. You are a safe distance from the island now. Perhaps 10 or 15 miles away, you watch the mountain, which now dominates the entire horizon. The column of smoke is no longer just a column. It is a monstrous churning tower of black and gray that seems to scratch the heavens. The deep red glow at its base is now visible even in the daylight, and then the world ends. It begins with a sound that is not a sound. It is a pressure wave, a physical blow that travels through the water and the air and your very bones. The loudest thing that has ever happened on this planet in recorded human history. It is a sound that will be heard, quite literally, around the world. Then comes the sight, the entire mountain. The one that has been the silent, brooding centerpiece of your entire existence simply ceases to be in its place. A column of fire, ash, and rock erupts miles into the sky, punching a hole through the atmosphere. It is a sight of such terrifying, sublime power that your mind can barely process it. It is as if the gods have torn the sky open. The plume of the eruption spreads out, forming a vast dark umbrella that begins to blot out the sun. Day turns to an eerie, premature twilight. The sea around you begins to hiss and boil as hot pumice and ash rain down from the sky. Small, porous stones, still warm to the touch, clatter onto the deck of your ship. The air becomes unbreathable, a choking mixture of sulfur and fine dust. People are coughing, weeping, hiding their faces. In their cloaks, you think you have witnessed the worst of it. You are wrong, as the caldera of the volcano collapses in on itself. It displaces a truly colossal amount of seawater. The sea level around your former island visibly drops, drawing back as if the ocean is taking a deep breath, and then it returns. A wave, a wall of water so high it defies belief, rises from the direction of the island. It's a tsunami of unimaginable scale. Your ship, which seemed so large and sturdy in the harbor, is now a tiny, helpless toy. The wave catches your flotilla. You are lifted, thrown, and tossed by a force of nature so absolute it feels like a personal act of divine hatred. The world becomes a jarring chaos of water, ash, and screaming. You cling to a rope, to your child, to the heaving deck, certain that this is the end, but somehow your ship holds battered and damaged. It crests the monstrous wave and slides down its backside into the churning sea beyond. Other ships are not so lucky. You see vessels smashed to splinters, their human cargo thrown into the maelstrom. The sky is dark, the sea is a maelstrom, and your home is gone. It has not just been destroyed, it has been annihilated, erased from the map, replaced by a gaping, steaming hole in the sea. In the days that follow, you drift under a sky of permanent twilight. The sun is a pale, sickly disk behind a veil of volcanic dust that has now spread across the entire Aegean. The great wave you survived continues its journey, smashing into the northern coast of Crete, the heart of your civilization. An hour later, it obliterates coastal towns, shatters fleets in their harbors, and floods fertile farmland. With salt water, the Minoan world, which was built on sea trade and naval power, has its legs cut out from under it by the sea itself. Your personal tragedy is also a civilization-ending event, though you do not Know it, yet you only know that you are alive, you are adrift, and you are surrounded by the wreckage of your world eventually. Your battered ship makes landfall on another island, or perhaps on the coast of mainland Greece. You and the other survivors stagger ashore, covered in ash, traumatized and possessing nothing but the clothes on your backs and the memories of a world that no longer exists. You are met by the local population. Perhaps they treat you with kindness and pity. Perhaps they see you as a threat, a drain on their resources. Your skills as a fresco painter are useless. Here you are no longer a respected artisan. You are a homeless survivor. Your story, and the story of your people, becomes a legend, a tale told around fires of a great island nation, a wealthy and powerful paradise that angered the gods and was swallowed by the sea in a single terrible day over the centuries. The details will blur the name of your island, Thera. Will be forgotten the name of your city, Akrotiri. Will be lost the name of your people, the Minoans. Will fade into obscurity, but the core of the story, the kernel of terrible truth, will survive it, will be passed down from generation to generation, from the Greeks to the Egyptians and back again, and eventually, 1,000 years later, a philosopher in Athens named Plato will hear a version of it. He will write it down, change the name, and use it as a political allegory. He will call your home Atlantis, and for millennia, people will search for it. They will imagine it as a place of impossible technology and utopian dreams. They will never guess the simple, more profound truth. They won't know about your 3-story house with its clever plumbing. They won't know about the beautiful paintings of leaping dolphins and saffron-gathering women you created. They won't know about the shared terror and the communal resilience of your final days. They will search for a myth, a fantasy, when the real story, your story, is so much more compelling. The story of a sophisticated, peaceful, and brilliant people who lived on a paradise island, who saw the end coming, and who had the courage and wisdom to walk away from everything they had ever known in order to survive. You didn't have magic crystals or flying machines. You had something far more powerful: community, ingenuity, and an unbreakable will to live. You survived, and your buried city waited, silent under the ash, to one day tell the true story as our journey through the last days of Akrotiri concludes. Tonight, we're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the Sleeping Archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible, tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet, the terrifying pirate torture methods Hollywood won't show you. Let's talk about pirates. Go on close, your eyes for a second, and picture 1. I'll wait. What did you see? Charming rogue with a heart of gold, a bit of a drinking problem, and a knack for witty banter, right? Maybe he's got a talking parrot, a suspiciously well-maintained tricorn hat, and some eyeliner that suggests he spends more time on personal grooming than on actual piracy. He's the swashbuckling anti-hero, the lovable scoundrel who sticks it to the man, liberates some treasure, and sails off into a glorious sunset with a bottle of rum and a comely maiden he probably rescued. It's a great story. It sells theme park tickets, Halloween costumes, and a frankly alarming number of movies starring Johnny Depp. This image of the pirate as a kind of rebellious libertarian sea hobo is one of history's most successful marketing campaigns. So widespread, so deeply embedded in our culture, that we've forgotten what these people actually were. They weren't free-spirited adventurers having a laugh at the expense of the Royal Navy. They were, to put it in the most accurate and least romantic terms possible, floating gangs of organized criminals engaged in armed robbery, kidnapping, and murder on the high seas. The rum was real, sure, but the witty banter was more often replaced with screams and the primary human resources tool they used to extract information was astonishingly inventive cruelty. The whole lovable rogue thing was a complete fabrication tonight. You are not the pirate. You are not the one with the cutlass between your teeth and a gleam in your eye. No, that's far too easy, far too comfortable. Tonight you are on the receiving end. You're a cooper, a barrel maker, aboard the merchant sloop Eleanor, sailing from Bristol to Jamaica in the year of our Lord, 1718. You are 32 years old. You have a wife and 2 small children you haven't seen in 6 months, and your primary concerns for the past several weeks have been the relentless heat, the quality of the salted beef, and whether the ship's rats are getting bolder. You're about to have a very, very bad day, and the proof of what's about to happen to you isn't found in a Hollywood script. It's found in the bone-chillingly dry depositions given by men like you, survivors who testified at the Admiralty Courts in London and Port Royal. It's found in skeletons recovered from pirate shipwrecks, skeletons bearing the unhealed marks of blade wounds and the fractures of a brutal existence. These court records and bones are the receipts, the grim, irrefutable proof of the business model of the golden age of piracy. This discovery, made not in one dramatic dig, but pieced together from hundreds of court documents and archaeological finds, reveals something amazing about the brutal reality of maritime predation. As we settle in tonight, we're going to uncover not just what archaeologists and historians found, but what it tells us about the surprisingly relatable lives of people who lived in the age of sail now. Dim the lights and prepare to discover why this story will change how you think about the Jolly Roger. Let's begin before the horror. Let's begin with the boredom. For the last 2 months, your world has been a circle of wood about 80 feet long. The horizon is a perfect, featureless line that separates a vast indifferent blue sky from a vast indifferent blue ocean. The soundtrack to your life is the perpetual creak and groan of the ship's timbers, a sound that has become so constant you only notice it when it changes pitch. It's the wooden ship's way of sighing, of complaining about the strain of the wind and the waves. You hear the rhythmic slap of water against the hull, the sharp crack of canvas when the wind shifts, and the distant lonely cry of a seabird. Your universe smells of salt, damp wood, tar, and something vaguely unpleasant wafting up from the bilge that you've learned to ignore. It's the smell of commerce, the smell of your livelihood. You are a cooper. This makes you important. While the sailors handle the ropes and the sails, your domain is the cargo hold. You are the master of staves and hoops, the guardian of the ship's most vital contents. Your hands, calloused and strong, know the feel of oak and iron. You can spot a leaky cask from 20 paces by the subtle change in its color, by the faintest scent of escaping rum. Or fresh water barrels are the cardboard boxes of the 18th century, and you're the guy who knows how to assemble, repair, and maintain them. You are a skilled tradesman, a specialist. This fact gives you a small, quiet sense of pride, and a status slightly above the common seaman who just hauls ropes. It also, though you don't know it yet, makes you a target. Your days are a study in routine. You wake in a cramped, stuffy hammock, wedged between a dozen others snoring, sweating men. The air is thick enough to chew. You eat breakfast, which is usually ship's biscuit, a flour and water cracker baked to the consistency of a ceramic tile. You've learned the trick of tapping it on the table before each bite to dislodge the weevils. Sometimes you get a bit of salted beef, a tough, gray slab of meat that has been preserved in so much brine it makes your tongue feel fuzzy. You spend your day in the dim, stuffy cargo hold, inspecting barrels. Check the hoops on the water casks, ensuring the crew's precious drinking supply isn't seeping away. You examine the barrels of salted cod, of flour, of nails and textiles bound for the colonial markets. It is tedious, repetitive work, punctuated by the gentle rolling motion of the ship. You don't talk much with the sailors. They are a different breed, superstitious, rough-edged men who speak a language of knots And rigging you only half understand, you are a landsman, technically. Just one with sea legs you keep to yourself, do your work, and count the days until you can feel solid ground beneath your feet again. You miss the simple things, the smell of your wife's baking, the feel of soft grass, the sound of your children's laughter. You carry these memories like precious jewels, turning them over in your mind during the long dark hours of the night watch. The captain, a portly man named Davies, is a stern but fair master. He runs a tight ship. He has to the Atlantic is a dangerous place, not just because of storms, but because of men. You've heard stories, of course, whispers in taverns back in Bristol, of ships that simply vanished, of French privateers, of Spanish coast guards, and of the worst of them all, the pirates. But those are just stories, aren't they? Things that happen to other people. Other ships. The Eleanor is a fast sloop, Captain Davies boasts. Too fast for any pirate. Life at sea is a unique blend of intense labor and profound monotony. The social structure is as rigid as the ship's mast. At the top is the captain, a god. In this wooden world below him are his mates, then the specialists, like you and the carpenter, and at the bottom, the able-bodied seaman. Everyone has a role, a station, a set of duties that you perform without question. It's a machine, and you are all cogs. This rigid hierarchy is designed for one thing: efficiency and survival. There's no room for debate when a squall hits or a sail needs to be reefed. You do what you're told. When you're told the alternative is a watery grave, this system is the bedrock of your world. The only thing that separates your floating speck of civilization from the chaos of the ocean. You cling to this order. You trust it. It's a trust that is about to be spectacularly misplaced. You resent the food, you resent the cramped quarters, and you definitely resent the complete lack of privacy. The head, a basic toilet, is just a seat over a hole at the very bow of the ship, open to the wind and the waves and the casual observation of your shipmates. Every aspect of your life is communal, public, and stripped of comfort, and yet there is a certain peace in the rhythm of it all. The sun rises, you work, you eat, the sun sets, you sleep, the ship plows onward. Ever westward, Jamaica gets a little closer every day. The promise of a payday, of a few weeks of shore leave in a bustling port town, is what keeps you going. You dream of fresh fruit, cold ale, and a letter from home. You tell yourself, it will all be worth it. You just need to endure. You have no idea that the greatest challenge to your endurance is not the sea, but what sails upon it. And it's getting closer with every passing hour. One Tuesday morning, the rhythm breaks. It starts not with a bang, but with a shout from the lookout in the crow's nest. Sail ho. The cry cuts through the morning air, sharp and clear at first. There's no alarm. Ships are a common enough sight on these busy trade routes. Captain Davies climbs the rigging with his spyglass, his stout frame surprisingly agile. You and a few other men gather on the deck, squinting at the horizon. You see it too, a tiny black speck, like a fleck of dust on the vast blue canvas. It's a long way off. For an hour, life continues as normal. You go back to your casks. The sailors continue their work, but there's a new tension in the air. Every so often, someone glances over the rail, measuring the speck's progress. It's getting larger, definitely larger, and it seems to be on a course to intercept yours. Captain Davies comes down from the rigging, his face unreadable. He orders a change in course, a subtle shift to put more distance between your ship and the stranger, but the speck follows, adjusting its own course to match. A low murmur spreads through the crew. This is not a friendly merchant. A friendly merchant wouldn't alter its course to follow you. This is a chase. The captain tries to remain calm, to project an aura of control. She's a heavy-looking brig, he announces to the crew, his voice a little too loud. We can outrun her. We're lighter in the water. But you see the flicker of doubt in his eyes. You look at the speck again. It's no Longer a speck, it's a ship, and it's gaining on you with an unnatural speed. The pirates, for that is what they must be, have clearly taken the time for a proper careening, beaching their vessel to scrape the hull clean of barnacles and seaweed. It's a simple maintenance trick that adds precious knots of speed, the kind of advantage that can mean the difference between a prize taken and a prize escaped. Your own ship's hull is fouled from months at sea. You are sluggish, they are swift. The atmosphere on the Eleanor transforms from quiet tension to coiled fear. The sailors move with a frantic energy, trying to coax every last bit of speed from the sails. The creaking of the ship's timbers now sounds less like a sigh and more like a groan of protest. You, the cooper, have no duties in a chase. You are useless. You can only stand on the deck, your heart a cold, heavy stone in your chest, and watch the other ship grow its close. Enough now that you can make out the details through the ship's spyglass. It's a brigantine, low and fast in the water, and it is crowded with men, far too. Many men for a merchant vessel. They are a swarm of ants on its deck. And then you see it, a small black flag is being run up the main mast at this distance. You can't make out the design, but you don't need to. Every sailor knows what a black flag means. It's the Jolly Roger. It's a declaration, surrender or die. The stories from the taverns are no longer stories. They are here. Captain Davies makes his decision. He will fight. It's a matter of pride and of economics. His cargo is valuable, and his investors back in Bristol would not look kindly on a captain who surrendered without a struggle. He orders the ship's 4 small cannons. To be loaded, he hands out muskets and cutlasses to the crew. You are given a pistol, a heavy, clumsy thing that feels alien in your cooper's hands. You've never fired a weapon in your life. The men around you are pale, their faces slick with sweat. They are sailors, not soldiers. They look at the approaching pirate ship, a vessel bristling with cannons and overflowing with men. And they know the odds. The pirates aren't just out for cargo. They see this as a sport, a terrifying, violent sport. You are no longer a man on a ship. You are a fox, and the hounds are closing in the sea, which just this morning seemed so peaceful now feels like a trap. There is nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. The world has shrunk to this patch of water, your slow ship, and the predator that is about to fall upon you. The first cannon shot is not a direct hit, it's a warning. A ball of iron skips across the water 100 yards ahead of your bow, sending up a great plume of white spray. It's the pirate equivalent of a polite knock on the door before kicking it down. Captain Davies shouts a defiant order, and one of your own cannons roars in response. The shot is laughably wide. It's a gesture of defiance, and a fatal one. The pirates, it seems, have decided the time for politeness is. Over the next sound you hear is a thunderous roar as the pirate ship unleashes a full broadside. This is the moment that reality splinters, the world dissolves into a hurricane of noise, smoke, and violence. It is nothing like the clean, heroic battles you've read about in pamphlets. It is sheer, deafening chaos. Cannonball strikes your main mast with a sound like the sky cracking open. The mast, a solid pillar of wood 3 feet thick, shatters into 1,000 flying splinters. One of them, the size of your arm, scythes through the air and decapitates the man standing next to you. One moment he is there, a terrified sailor from Liverpool named Thomas. The next, he is a collapsing heap, a fountain of crimson spraying across the deck. You are frozen, unable to process what you have just seen. The air fills with the acrid smell of gunpowder and the horrifying high-pitched screams of wounded men. Another cannonball smashes into the hull near the waterline, sending a geyser of seawater and wooden shards onto the deck. The ship lurches violently, and you are thrown against the rail. The pistol flies from your grasp and skitters across the blood-slicked planks. You scramble for cover, huddling behind a stack of crates as the world continues to come apart around you. The pirates are pulling alongside now, their cannons firing chain shot, 2 smaller cannonballs, linked by a length of chain, designed not to sink a ship, but to shred its rigging and sails. The chains spin through the air with a demonic whistling sound, tearing through your canvas sails as if they were paper ropes, and spars crash down onto the deck. The Eleanor is crippled, helpless. The pirates are screaming, a chorus of savage, triumphant howls that are more terrifying than the cannons. They are not just attacking your ship. They are reveling in its destruction. Through the thick, choking smoke, you see their grappling hooks fly across the gap between the ships. Biting deep into your ship's railings, they are boarding. This is the end of the fight, and the beginning of the nightmare. The men who swarm over the rails are not the dashing rogues of fiction. They are a terrifying vision from hell. They are sun-blackened, scarred, and filthy. Some are missing eyes or limbs, crude prosthetics of wood or iron in their place. They are barefoot, wearing a ragged collection of stolen clothes from a dozen different nations. They are armed to the teeth, with cutlasses, axes, and pistols tucked into their belts. They are a multinational, multicultural mob, united by desperation and a capacity for extreme violence. You see white Englishmen, black former slaves from the sugar plantations, grizzled Dutchmen, and wiry Frenchmen. This is the pirate crew, a floating United Nations of brutal outcasts. They move with a terrifying purpose, a practiced efficiency in the art of violent takeover. The resistance from your crew collapses almost instantly. Most throw down their weapons and beg for quarter. Captain Davies, however, fights on, a wild look. In his eyes, he cuts down one pirate with his sword before he is overwhelmed, disappearing under a pile of bodies. You press yourself smaller behind the crates, praying they won't see you. Your heart is hammering against your ribs so hard you think it will break them. You can hear the pirates rampaging across the deck, their shouts of victory mingling with the moans of the wounded. They are not gentle victors. They kick and beat the surrendering sailors, driving them into a huddled group in the center of the deck. This isn't a capture, it's a humiliation. The rigid order of your world has not just been broken, it has been inverted. The lowest dregs of the sea are now the masters, and you are less than nothing, a pirate with a hideous scar that pulls his lip into a permanent snarl. Finds you, he presses the cold barrel of a pistol to your temple. He doesn't say a word, he just jerks his head toward the other captives. Your desperate attempt to hide has lasted less than a minute. You stand, your legs shaking so badly you can barely walk, and join the line of the defeated. The pirates strip you of anything valuable: your boots, your belt, the small silver locket with a miniature of your wife inside. They take it all. The pirate captain, a massive man with a great black beard and cold, dead eyes, strides onto the deck. He surveys the scene with a look of bored appraisal. This is just another day at the office for him. He and his crew have a system, a brutal but effective methodology for processing a new acquisition. The first order of business is to locate the valuables. They know every ship has a manifest, and every captain knows where the strong box is hidden. They drag your captain, bleeding from a dozen cuts, but still alive, before their leader. The pirate captain asks a simple question. Where is the gold? Captain Davies, defiant to the last, spits blood onto the deck and refuses to answer. This is where the real business of piracy begins. This is the part they don't put in the movies. The pirates don't waste time with clever persuasion. Their methods of interrogation are a form of psychological and physical warfare, designed to break a man as quickly and completely as possible. They call it sweating. They tie Captain Davies to the mast. Two pirates stand on either side of him. With sharpened sail needles and small knives, they begin to prick and poke at him, making hundreds of tiny shallow cuts all over his body. It's not meant to kill him. Not yet. It's meant to inflict maximum pain and terror. They want the other captives, including you, to watch. They want you to see what happens to those who resist. This is a performance, a demonstration. Your captain's screams are a lesson for the rest of you. After 10 minutes of this, when he is a weeping, bleeding mess, they escalate. They bring out the slow-burning matches. These are cords of hemp soaked in saltpeter, which burn slowly and very hotly. They wedge them between Captain Davies's fingers, then tie his hands together. The matches sizzle and smoke, slowly burning. Down to the flesh, the smell of scorched skin fills the air. It's an intimate, horrifying form of torture, designed to be agonizingly slow. His screams become hoarse, broken sobs. Still, he doesn't talk. So they move on to a technique they call wooding. They wrap a length of rope around his forehead and twist it, tight with a pistol butt. Like a tourniquet, the pressure builds, squeezing his skull. You can see the blood vessels in his eyes bulge. It's a crude, but brutally effective way to inflict unbearable pain. You can wash, but you can't look away. The pirate crew is watching with a detached interest, some even making wagers on how long he will last. This is their corporate training seminar. This is their version of a team-building exercise. Finally, after what feels like an eternity, Captain Davies breaks. He gasps the location of the strongbox, hidden beneath the floorboards of his cabin. The pirates cheer. They cut him down, a broken and whimpering wreck, and toss him aside like a piece of garbage. They have what they want now. Their attention turns to the rest of you. The interrogation is over, but the processing has just begun. The pirates have a problem. They are an outlaw society, constantly at war with the entire civilized world. They are always short on manpower. Disease, desertion, and combat take a constant toll they need to replenish their ranks, and they do it by force. The pirate quartermaster, a man who acts as a combination of treasurer and human resources manager, walks down the line of captives, looking each of you over. He's not looking for fighters, he's looking for skills. He stops in front of the ship's surgeon, a man named Harris. You a doctor? He grunts. Harris nods, trembling. Good, you're with us now. He moves on. He points to the carpenter, the navigator, and then he stops in front of you. What do you do? He asks, his voice flat and void of emotion. You swallow hard, your mouth dry as dust. I'm a cooper, sir. A flicker of interest in his eyes. A cooper, a man who can maintain the ship's barrels, the containers for their food, their water, and their most precious commodity, their rum. You are valuable, terribly, horribly valuable. You're with us too. He says it is not a question. It is a statement of fact. You have just been conscripted. This is the pirate's dirty little secret. Most pirate crews were not entirely made up of willing volunteers. A significant portion, perhaps as much as a quarter or a third, were forced men like you, men with valuable skills, who were given a simple, brutal choice. They would hold a pistol to your head and ask you to sign their articles, their pirate code of conduct. If you signed, you became one of them, entitled to a share of the plunder, but also subject to their harsh laws and the constant risk of being hanged if captured. If you refused to sign, your fate was uncertain, but likely very grim. Some were simply murdered and thrown overboard. Others were marooned, left on a deserted island, with a flask of water, a little powder, and a single shot for their pistol. It was a slow, agonizing death sentence. You've seen what they did to your captain for simply protecting his cargo. What will they do to you for refusing to join their brotherhood? You are standing on the blood-soaked deck of your captured ship, surrounded by murderers. Your captain is a broken man. Your shipmates are either dead, wounded, or about to be press-ganged alongside you. Your old life, your wife, your children, your home in Bristol feels 1,000,000 miles away. A dream you once had. The pirate quartermaster is waiting for your answer. Holds out the articles. A piece of parchment covered in crude handwriting. It details the rules of their society. No fighting on board the ship. Every man has an equal vote in affairs of the moment. Every man gets an equal share of the plunder. It sounds democratic, almost. Enlightened. But it is the constitution of a nation of wolves, and they are inviting you to join the pack. What choice do you have? You look at the pistol in his hand, then at the endless empty ocean around you. Refusal is death. Either quick or slow acceptance is a different kind of death. A death of your old self, your soul. You would become one of them. A pirate, a criminal, a man hunted by every navy in the world. This is the turning point, the moment where your identity is forcibly erased and rewritten. You think of your family. If you die here, they will never know what happened to you. They will simply wait for years for a husband and father who will never return. But if you live, if you join them, is there a chance, however small, that you might one day escape, that you might survive this? It's a sliver of hope in a sea of despair, and you cling to it. You take the quill. He offers your hand. The hand that has shaped so many barrels is shaking uncontrollably. You sign your name. The moment the ink touches the parchment, you feel a profound sense of loss. You are no longer the Cooper of the Eleanor. You are now a pirate. The quartermaster claps you on the back with a force that nearly sends you to your knees. "Welcome aboard, brother," he says with a grin that doesn't reach his eyes. The pirates waste no time. They are brutally efficient. They transfer the most valuable parts of your cargo, the textiles, the rum, the tools, to their own ship. They take the sails and rigging from the Eleanor. Anything that could be useful. The rest of your crew, the ones without valuable skills, are stripped of their clothes and set adrift in one of the ship's small boats with a few casks of water. A slim chance of survival, but it's better than what they do to your ship. Once the Eleanor is picked clean, they set it on fire. You stand on the deck of the pirate ship and watch as the vessel that was your home for months is consumed by flames. It burns brightly for a while against the setting sun. Then, with a final mournful groan, it slips beneath the waves, taking your old life with it. There is no going back. Life as a forced man among pirates is a precarious existence. You are a member of the crew, but not one of them. The volunteers, the men who chose this life, look at you with a mixture of pity and contempt. Are a gentleman of fortune against your will. You do your job. You repair their water casks, their rum barrels, their gunpowder kegs. Your skills keep you alive. You eat their food, which is surprisingly better and more plentiful than what you had on the merchant ship pirates when they captured a prize. Feasted, but you eat it with a knot in your stomach. You learn their ways. You learn that their democracy is a thin veneer over a culture of violence. Disputes are settled with duels on the nearest shore. The captain is elected and can be deposed just as easily if the plunder dries up. It's a society of radical equality and radical brutality all at once. You are living in a state of constant low-grade terror. Every day is a gamble. A storm could sink you. A Royal Navy warship could appear on the horizon, spelling a quick, violent battle and a slow, ignominious death on the gallows. Your fellow pirates are not your friends. They are volatile, dangerous men, traumatized by their pasts and numbed by alcohol and violence. You keep your head down. You do your work. You speak when spoken to. You become a ghost. A functioning machine that mends barrels while your mind is 1,000 leagues away. Back in Bristol, you pray for a miracle, for a chance to escape. You are caught in a nightmare from which you cannot wake, and this is where the archaeological and historical record provides the final chilling postscript to your story. Men like you, the forced men, were in a legal and existential trap. If your pirate ship was captured by the authorities, you were tried alongside the volunteers. Your claim of being forced into service was often your only defense against the hangman's noose. And the courts were skeptical. How could they tell a true victim from a savvy pirate trying to save his own skin? The evidence often came down to testimony. Did other crew members see you take up arms willingly? Did you accept a share of the plunder? The depositions from these trials, preserved in the archives, are filled with the desperate pleas of men like you, trying to prove their innocence. I was forced. They'd say I only did what I was told to save my life. Sometimes it worked, more often it didn't. You would be hanged all the same, your name recorded in a dusty ledger as just another pirate executed at Port Royal or Wapping Old Stairs. The other piece of evidence comes from the silence of the sea itself, from shipwrecks like the Whydah Galley, the flagship of the pirate Sam Bellamy, which sank off the coast of Cape Cod in 1717. Archaeologists excavating the wreck have found the tools of the tradesmen aboard, the carpenter's adzes, the navigator's dividers, and yes, the cooper's adzes for shaping barrel staves. They found the skeletons of the crew, tangled in the wreckage. These bones tell stories of a hard life. They show evidence of healed fractures, of blade wounds, of diseases like scurvy and syphilis. They are the physical remains of men who lived and died in this brutal world. One of those skeletons could have been yours, a silent testament to a life hijacked on the high seas, a man whose skills made him too valuable to kill and too useful to let go. Your story, the story of the victim, the forced man, is the one that gets lost between the cracks of the romantic myth. But it's there, in the court records and in the sand-covered bones. It's a story not of adventure, but of survival, not of freedom, but of coercion. It's the brutal, unvarnished truth of what it meant to fall into the hands of pirates as our journey through the harrowing ordeal of a pirate's victim concludes tonight. We're reminded that the past is far from dusty and dull. It's a vibrant, often surprising, and always intriguing tapestry woven with human ingenuity, resilience, and the occasional ancient mystery that still makes us wonder. This is the sleeping archaeologist, encouraging you to remain curious about the incredible tales still waiting to be discovered beneath our feet. Good night.